We are still finding out just how badly that earthquake devastated Japanese industry. Increasingly, signs are pointing to a major disruption in the technology supply chain, a disruption that may stall production of everything from iPads to smartphones. Berger has taken a close look at the Japanese companies that play key roles in the supply chain, and he's here to share his findings. Craig is Senior Vice President and Senior Research Analyst at FBR Capital Markets. Craig, let's start with the things people know best. Okay. iPads, Apple. We've seen the Apple stock roar. We've seen the demand for the new iPad, outstrip supply. Shelves are empty. Might they return anytime soon?
So clearly, Apple has 2 or 3 products that are made in Japan that could be impacted. This is probably, a near-term thing because I don't think Apple's going to wait for very long. But does it take 3 or 4 or 5, 6 weeks? Clearly, it is going to impact iPad 2 production. The three areas that are sort of Japanese exposed in terms of production are NAND flash, CMOS image sensors, which are very tight anyways, and then the touchscreens, which are also a gate to the iPad 2 devices right now. So it could push out the time that it takes to get the next iPad.
But not just Apple and not just the iPad, of course. Give us a sense of the range of products that might be affected by this disruption in Japan, and beyond that, the companies that are affected.
Sure. So there's winners and losers. On one other shortage that's popping up, or potential shortage, is this rare chemical called BT. It's used in different package types, and so if you're a chip company that uses that package type,
packaging is key to the chip industry. Exactly. You can't just have a chip; it has to be sitting into something that interfaces with the device.
Exactly, and those packages plug into the motherboards in a certain way, so you can't just switch the package out. There's a whole requalification effort, but there's about 4 weeks of inventory of this resin called BT, and that the main plant that makes most of the world's supply is pretty close to those nuclear reactors. So
even if it hasn't been that badly damaged, it's quite possible that nobody wants to go to work or has been told don't go to work because of the threat of radiation contamination.
It's likely. And so if they don't get that factory up in the next month or so, then we could get into a shortage situation. There's 3 companies that are fairly highly exposed to the BT package resin. Those are Xilinx, Altera, and Qualcomm.
Okay, 3 big chip manufacturers. Let's go a little further down the food chain. Who else might be affected by this disruption?
Well, one winner potentially would be OmniVision. OVTI is the ticker. It's not covered by FBR. They make CMOS image sensors, but they have no presence in Japan. And so to the extent that the Japanese guys are offline, pricing goes way up, they would stand to be a beneficiary potentially.
Okay.
And
how about on the negative side?
And then on the negative side, guys like SanDisk and Toshiba have a lot of NAND flash production in Japan. To the extent their factories are taken offline, that would be an incremental negative. 2 companies that I cover in my sector that also have fairly high exposure, Texas Instruments and onsemi, ONN's the ticker there. And again, these are more near-term issues, but we don't know if it takes 2 weeks, 6 weeks, or more to hash through these issues. So TI does have 3 manufacturing facilities there. 2 of them have been damaged, and ON has also factories there, less damage but more revenue exposure. So the customers are also checked out right now.
Craig, how much of a challenge is it to go through the food chain? Because we know, for example, that companies like Apple are quite secretive about exactly what components they put into their products. And you have to take the thing apart in order to figure it out. And even then, you can't be certain, and you can't be certain what's inside the inside, so to speak. Is it a big challenge?
It is a big challenge. There are professionals out there that melt away the package with acids and do spectrometer analysis and dig into it. And then there's all sorts of speculation leading up to the launch of a device, who's in it. And usually the market gets it right, but sometimes we're surprised.
How much of a risk is this for Japan's tech industry long term? Is this a huge opportunity, for example, for the Koreans, for the Taiwanese, potentially the Chinese, and maybe even the Americans to take some market share in areas that Japan has been able to hold on to?
That's possible. Those other companies could supply there more. I think one major takeaway that tech companies are going to take is that extremely low inventories, while cost efficient and good most of the time, can be bad during times of crisis. And so you might actually see a push to raise inventories a little bit, to have a little more safety stock on hand, especially with some of these key components that are potentially only made by one company, like this BT.
Right, made by Mitsubishi.
Made by Mitsubishi Gas Chemical.
Okay, specifically Mitsubishi Gas Chemical. And how long do you think it'll take before we know the true extent of the impact of the supply chain and the impact, or the effect, let's say, that that's going to have on the companies that depend on it?
Well, that's a good question. How long is it going to take? You know, it's clearly still coming in. I know when I first wrote about this on Friday morning of last week, it's not nearly, it wasn't nearly as bad then as it's gotten now. So it continues to get worse. It's definitely going to take a month or two to hash this out at least. And you're right. I mean, people may question where they want to rebuild and how they want to rebuild.
Craig, thanks so much for joining us. Craig Berger of FBR Capital Markets. You heard him say it. Potentially an opportunity for some, but a problem for other companies. Xilinx, Altera, Qualcomm, just some of them affected by the disrupted supply chain in Japan.